Hi, everybody. Welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Graven, and our guest today is Michael Buzinski. He is the president and CMO of his company, Buzzworthy Integrated Marketing. So Michael, or Buzz, as most call him, he's a lifelong entrepreneur. He's a digital marketing thought leader, and he's a best-selling author of the book, The Rule of 26 for Service-Centric Businesses, 3 Steps to Doubling Website Revenue. So before I tell you a little bit more about Michael, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
And I mean, people do call you Buzz. Should I call you Buzz? You feel,
Yes,
is it
please.
funny if I don't call you Buzz?
You know, my dad calls me Michael. My wife calls me Michael. Everybody else calls me Buzz.
And sometimes, and there's that tone where you would think like, oh, am I in trouble? But no.
Right?
So, all right, I will call it. Thank you, Buzz.
Just don't call me late for dinner. Can we do that? Can we make sure?
So Buzz has been dubbed a visionary marketer by the American Marketing Association. His sole mission is to reduce the prevalence of entrepreneurial poverty in the US. So that's a phrase maybe we can come back to and hear more about later. But Buzz is a 10-year Air Force veteran. So thank you for your service for sure. He now mentors other vetrepreneurs through an organization called Warriors Rising. He leads marketing workshops for the Small Business Administration, the Small Business Development Center in multiple states, and he's presented marketing workshops for multiple universities. So you can learn more about the book online at www.ruleof26.com, and you can also find him at buzzworthy.biz. So there's a lot we'll have a good conversation about here today, I'm sure, Buzz. But as we normally do, since it's my favorite mistake, I'm going to hit you right with my favorite question. What would you say is your favorite mistake?
Well, Mark, I remember you asking me this originally, and I'm like, well, which one? I have so many mistakes, over the years. I've been a full-time entrepreneur for 17 years now. And there are a lot of mistakes I made along the way. I can't say that they're all favorites, but there's definitely trajectory changing mistakes that freed me to get me where I'm at today. So I would say my most recent favorite mistake was deciding to send myself on a videography trip to Italy. A few years ago, I had a creative agency, and one of the things we did was video production. And there was a local concert choir in Anchorage, Alaska, that was going on tour in Italy. And I only had one videographer, and I didn't have anybody else that had road experience or producer experience, and on top of that have videography experience to be the second camera, and we only could take 2 people. So I decided to take myself and my video guy. One day into the trip, I get a call from my office manager saying that the power had gone out in a part of the building. We had a 13,000 square foot facility, and I'm across the world, and basically what happened was somebody didn't pay the bill to one of the 3 meters I had for the building. That's how big the building was. And my office manager didn't take care of it. And I had young staff that thought, oh my gosh, they didn't pay the electric bill. We must be going out of business. And for 11 days, that stewed with, let's see, out of the 25 people in the building, technically 23, because 2 of us were in Italy. I would say 15 of them, all millennials. Nothing against millennials, but they're all in the same mindset, right? And they're young, and they're just out of college at the time, and the whole 9 yards. And they're just spinning like, oh my gosh, I got to pay rent, I got to pay my car bill, I got to pay my tuition bill. I mean, all the other things that goes along with that. And so by the time I got back, I kind of had this little coup d'etat that happened. And had I been in the building, would have never have happened. But because of that drama that lasted a good 3 months of just horrific drama, I'd lost probably 5 staff out of the whole thing. It was horrific experience, but because of it, it drove me to make the decision to break the company up. We were a
Oh.
multi-million-dollar creative agency in Anchorage, Alaska. We were considered one of the top agencies in the state. Um, and that was all fine and dandy on paper, but I was absolutely miserable.
Mhm.
And it really forced me to take a look at, well, what does the next 5 years of my life look like to clean up this mess? Because you can't just go on Indeed and say, hey, by the way, we're hiring, so come on up. Like, you're going to Alaska. It's a move, it's a
Yeah.
commitment,
Yeah.
and you either love it or you hate it. And so at that time, I'm like, well, how do I do it differently? Because if I just do it the same way I've been doing it for 15 years at the time, what am I going to be? What is it going to look like in 5 years? It's just be more of the same.
Mhm.
And so that's when I just decided, I was like, listen, we're shutting this building down. It's too much of a pain in the
Wow.
butt. I don't care anymore about the building. It was just wasn't worth it. And so
Mhm.
I said, we're going to flip this thing on its head and we're going to go completely virtual. Still want to work with me? Go home. We're going to work from
Yeah.
home.
Wow.
Okay. And
And this
January
was
2000,
pre-pandemic even?
it's a pre-pandemic.
Mhm.
So yeah, very, very serendipitous as the
Yeah.
pandemic hit. But January 2019 is when I opened up Buzzworthy Integrated Marketing. And then I took all of the media production and put it into a division now called BuzzBiz Media. And it's a legacy production house. It's award winning, and we've had clients for, like I said, 15, well, now 17 years. And excuse me, but the focus was Buzzworthy, and Buzzworthy would
Mhm.
not exist had I not made
Mhm.
the fatal mistake of going to Italy when I did.
Wow. And so that's a great example of a favorite mistake where there's some sort of serendipity or something that comes out of it. So it's just kind of recapping. It sounds like there's a couple different layers of mistake. Maybe one was not having a really solid process for who's paying the electric bill. Like that wasn't your responsibility as the CEO. That was somebody on your team. So there was probably avoidable. And then there was that compounding of you were out of the country. And like it was a matter of like you didn't know how people were reacting because you weren't there with them.
Right.
Fair to
And
say.
I was having to share quarters with an employee who was in that same boat. So that person was getting feedback and holding it back and not saying anything,
Mm,
right? Because people were, it was fuming. It ended up being that um that person decided that when we got home that he didn't need the company anymore for the project, and actually told the client to go direct with him as we
oh,
were going through this transition. So I mean, even with all of that, it was definitely what you were saying as far as my top two were not the right people, and we
mhm,
didn't have the SOPs to make sure that those
mm,
types of issues didn't happen. And furthermore, there weren't the right people even if I had those SOPs, right?
sure.
So it was a perfect storm,
Mm,
and it was the best worst thing that I've ever had to go through, because
yeah.
now I don't have as much stress. I have a third of the staff and do much better for myself, and I have a company that works for me versus a company I work for. I
Mm,
own a
mhm,
business. um, for the most part. I'm still, we're always working for that financial freedom, right? Where we're not working in our business, but very minute amount of time, and
mm,
even then we can just disappear for 30 days and it'll come back to it stronger and better.
yeah.
It doesn't need you. That's when you own a business, to
Yeah.
me. And so we're 3 years in,
Mhm,
and we're still working it out. I mean, for 15 years at brick and mortar, now 3 years in of a online only remote staff that's spread from coast to coast.
yeah.
It's a different beast, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun, and it does allow me to travel a lot more with my wife when we love to travel all around the world. And so all of the things came from that one trip.
Yeah. Where again, maybe just as a recap to it, what I heard you saying, Buzz, was you without that. I don't know if wake up call is the right word, but you probably would have just continued cruising along. Like sometimes there's inertia, autopilot, where we keep moving, and that prompted you to reevaluate things. I appreciate your reflections instead of just blaming those employees or saying like, oh, well, they didn't care about the business. Shame on them for leaving. Like, it seems like you did get some feedback of what had happened, what role you played. I appreciate you taking ownership of that.
Well, buck stops at the owner. I mean, anybody who doesn't want to take responsibility for what happens within their company, regardless of the situation, should probably go get a job.
Yeah.
Because it all boils down to you.
Yeah.
You put everybody that's in your business, regardless of whether you're a direct hire or not. And you put the systems in place and you put the policies in place, and you're responsible for cultivating the culture, and you're responsible for the welfare of your employees while they're in the building. I mean, all of that's on you. And I thank you. I appreciate you, giving me credit for it. But I also feel like that's my duty, and that's the minimum requirement of being a CEO.
Yeah. Well, and what you said there, that's really powerful. And not everybody shares that mindset. So I think it is worth calling out. Like, I think back, somebody who I was fortunate to be exposed to, he passed away in early 2020, Paul O'Neill. He was the U.S. Treasury Secretary under George W. Bush. He had been the CEO of Alcoa. And Paul O'Neill, as a CEO and as an executive, that was one of his core beliefs, that as the leader, you are responsible for everything that happens in your organization.
100%.
Whether you like it or not, because you articulated it very well.
Thank you.
Similar to what he would have said. So you've got a kindred CEO spirit there with those mindsets. So there's other things we talk about. There are a couple details from your profile and bio that I didn't read up front. You describe yourself as a failed musician. I'm curious, like, was that because of any mistake, or it's tough to make it as a musician, right?
Yeah, well, so it's funny because I became a professional jazz trombonist at the age of 13 when my junior high jazz ensemble decided to go pro. And we recorded an album, we had t-shirts and matching hats and all the things, and we went on tour up and down the California coast. And then we all went into high school. It all just kind of went away from there. But it was a great experience, and it gave me the bug to entertain. And so I picked up a guitar at the age of 15. And by the time I was 16, I had a punk rock band called Fallout Shelter. And there's two of my other buddies, one of them which I taught how to play the bass guitar as I was learning how to play the guitar. Yeah. So it was just one of those. I think that's like where the entrepreneurial undercoat that I have has just always been like, we'll figure it out as we go. We'll build the plane as it's taking off, right? We'll worry about tomorrow. Okay. And and I went through a series of bands through high school, and shortly after high school, I was technically a high school dropout for a few years. Didn't go back to high school until I was 21, right before I joined the service. And then while I was in the service, I had working bands. I probably kept me out of a lot of trouble being in a band. So there's responsibility. It gives you focus. It gives me a lot of practice in the marketing that I kind of came from sales and marketing in my early professional career before joining the service. So that kept that going. Technology was part of it because we now had CDs that we could burn in the practice area and give out demos at the shows, and had a lot of fun doing that. But for 15 years, I was a working musician, and it was always a side hustle. Always had aspirations of making it, but we just never made it. Just not tall enough, dark enough, or talented enough.
Well, I mean, it doesn't, so when you say failed musician, I guess, it always comes back to the definition of failed, like, being able to pursue that even as a side hustle for 15 years, it's not a complete failure.
No, but the goal was not met, and that's failure. And it wasn't a tragic failure, but it's failed. I shot for something, didn't hit it. Move on. It
sounds like then with the moving on, you had learned a lot in the process. Like, it seems like a band. I had a guest on the podcast who had been in a country music band, but then parlayed that, even though the band never really made it big, he parlayed that into an online software business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having a total, my most recent mistake is having a total brain cramp on his name. Steve Garine was his name. I'll look up the episode number, but it's similar to what you were saying, like, thinking of the band as a startup and thinking of those lessons. He found a business that was very related to musicians and songwriters, right? So it's a different way of learning from that.
Well, my first business when I got out of the service was the Biz Studios, was a recording studio. And so I'd had a horrible experience in professional recording studios before, throughout the process. And I didn't want other musicians to have that problem. And I really liked the technical part of it. I almost got out of the service because I was in for 2 terms. And at the end of my first term, I almost got out and moved to Austin, Texas, to become a songwriter. And thank God I didn't make that mistake. That would have been whew. So I got stationed up in Anchorage, Alaska, which was beautiful. I got to live there for 17 years, and it was about a year into that I realized that surviving off of starving musicians was a horrible business plan, but it was a wonderful mistake. And it pivoted me into what I would never have thought, which was media production for small businesses. I had to take a look at that. And then, of course, a lot of micro businesses don't have money either, but their whole process is like, they have to market to survive. And marketing has been around. It's one of the longest lasting professions in the world, in human race, and it's not going away. And I was good at it. I feel like I'm better at it now than I have ever been, because I become more and more of a student. So the more that I feel as a student, I feel the better I am, because I'm just staying sharper and sharper, and I just keep getting it more focused, and just the energy is really focused on the revenue and all those good things. When you're first in business and you launch your business, it's about paying the bills, and it's like, what can I do to garner revenue, right? Where do people find value? And one of the first things we did was I'd hired a homeless guy off the street who helped me paint the place, lay the carpet. We figured out how to lay carpet, and I built out the sound room and did all the engineering and designing and all that good stuff. And when it was all said and done, he didn't have anything else to do, and I was kind of giving him a place to sleep. And he was kind of my security system before I had my security system put in. And I had a lot that I had accumulated while I was in the service to build the studio out. So I told him, get a phone book, call the local businesses and ask them, who makes their business cards. Because right about then, color business cards had been invented. Like, it was one black and white, one color, two color, possibly 3 color. And if you had a full color business card, that was like the mamma jamma, right?
Flashy.
And I found a distributor who would wholesale to me, and we could work through mail, right? So they would send it to me and I deliver it to my clients. And so I would go in with this little portfolio of business cards that I designed, and they would see the difference between a 1 color and a full color. And they'd look at their one, like, I want color. And I'd tell them the price. And they're like, well, that's as much as a 2 color. I was like, yes, I can give you full color for the price of 2 color. Oh yeah, let's do that. Okay, great. Can I have the design files? Oh, I don't have color design files. Oh, that's okay. We have graphic design.
There's another service.
And doing all the things that marketers do. And it built from there, and we started adding things on. My original thought was that I was going to create a full media production studio for musicians. And so they would walk in, and from get to go, we would create everything from recording the album, pressing the album art, posters for the concerts, postcards to their mailing list, video, music videos, you name it. We were going to do it, one-stop shop for the musician. Of course, none of them could afford that level of service. And so that's where the pivot came really quick.
Yeah, there's a classic entrepreneurship lesson. It often comes up when we talk about lean startups and the need to pivot. But the questions of, can I do something? Like, clearly you could technically deliver those goods and services. Then there's that question of, should I? is there a business model around the product and service? And your story sounds like a great example of the need to pivot and find a market. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. One of my favorite mistakes in that era was taking on a sponsorship. So it was a sponsorship and trade for the local equivalent of UFC. So mixed martial arts, right?
Yeah.
Who is now a partner with UFC. So they're on their network and everything. So I was in the early days of that and helping them out. And I thought having my name plastered in the middle of the mat would definitely bring people in. And I worked with this lady for 3 years, and it was always such a stressful place for us. But we thought we got to keep it going. It's there. It's keeping the machines running. Blah blah blah. Whatever my justification was for those 3 years, I made it happen. And then when she decided to go a different direction, I thought my whole world was falling apart. Little did I know, her leaving was the best thing, because the next cycle, all of a sudden, we had all this bandwidth for paying customers. What a novel idea.
and so it sounds like that's where your phrase, trying to eliminate entrepreneurial poverty, comes from. Is that trying to help people avoid the trap, or help them getting out of the trap of, I'm super busy, but I'm not making any money?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I find I coined or I borrowed the phrase from Mike Michalowicz. I don't know if he coined it or not. When I read his book, Profit First.
Yeah.
And I just clung on to that. I was like, that is exactly what I've been doing. Not knowing it, but that's what I do. I tell people, don't spend money on marketing if you, one, can't afford to invest it and lose it, because there is a inherent risk to marketing.
Yeah.
And then number two, don't garner business that's not profitable. And for many years, I undercharged. And it wasn't until I realized that me underbilling for my services was actually stealing from the clients I was trying to help. I thought I was giving them a deal and finding a way to do it on the cheap. What was really doing is robbing them of the opportunity cost, because we weren't all in. Neither of us, the client nor I, were all in on doing what was necessary to get them to where they wanted to go.
Yeah.
And so while I was rebuilding through Buzzworthy integrated marketing, that's what happened. Rates doubled, tripled, quadrupled, because I started getting really stringent on outcome.
Yeah.
And the outcome has to be revenue moving. It's the most expensive needle to move, but it is also the most profitable needle to move, right?
Yeah.
And then with that, I find myself, the better I get at that, as we have been getting much better at that, because we're all in every time, we're getting these great results. Well, now I'm finding that I've got to prep my clients to go, okay, can you handle this kind of business?
Yeah.
Because we're going to give it to you, but now can you process it? Because the worst thing I can do is give you all the traffic, and then you just sit there and let it all fall on the floor and make your brand unreliable in the public eye.
Yeah.
Can't have that either.
Yeah.
So I find myself in this little gray area sometimes of business consultant, and I bring in my friends who are business consultants so that we don't confuse the two, right? And say, hey, listen, Bob over here is a business consultant. He's going to make sure your finances are right, your processes are good, and you're doing things so that they're in a profitable manner, right?
Yeah.
So client comes in, you serve client pays and leaves, and you're actually left with a little profit, because so many of us work on cash flow versus profit flow.
Yeah. Well, a lot of great tips. I'm sure there's a lot of great advice in the book. Again, our guest is Michael Buzinski. The Rule of 26 for Service-Centric Businesses is the title of the book. And at a high level, what is the Rule of 26?
Very simple. The Rule of 26 in its entirety is, if you increase unique traffic by 26% to your website, the conversion rate of that website by 26%, and the average value per client or average revenue per client of that business that you get by 26%, you get a compounded effect of 100% more business from your website, essentially doubling the revenue you get from your website. And I created it because service-centric businesses fail to utilize their website because they don't see how they can get business from it. So the book clarifies very simply, if you just focus on these 3 KPIs, and here's some tactics to get you started, you too will immediately start moving the revenue needle. And if you get through all 3 steps, you will double it. The great thing is, and when you're done and that's not enough revenue for you, just do it again. It'll double again.
And so you don't need to double website traffic. You don't need to double the conversion rate. It only has to go up by 26%, you're saying.
Each. Yes.
That's surprising to people, I think, right?
Yes. And that's the thing. Like, people sit there and say, well, why don't I just double the traffic? I mean, I'm only getting 500 people. I'll just get 1,000 people. I was like, well, are you getting the right 1,000 people?
Right.
Is your conversion rate staying stable as you increase traffiake? And so that's by key. Paying attention to all 3, making you look at all 3 and saying, okay, I did by 26%. So I didn't have to go all in on traffic. Just needed to go 26% more. Okay, did we stay at the same conversion rate? No. Okay, well, then we need to get up to where we were and then increase it by 26%. The great thing is this. When you're doing that, you're literally increasing revenue from your website as you're making these KPIs happen. So it's not like you have to do all 3 things and then all of a sudden you get paid. You're getting increases in revenue from your website as you go, which I feel is much more rewarding and promising to the brain to say, keep going, than saying, okay, we're going to double. And then you do all the work to double and nothing happens at the revenue level. Yeah.
So as an engineer, I couldn't help but do the math. On my iPhone calculator, I multiplied 1.26 times 1.26 times 1.26, and sure enough, it checks out. You get 2.000376.
That's why it's 26, because originally I did like 25%.
That's not quite.
And then I'm like, but that's like it's like 90% more, 97% more. I was like, well, what would it be to get double? I mean, everybody gets double. Like, I like double, right? And so then I'm like, 26. I just popped in 26 to do the same math you were doing, and lo and behold, that's what happened. I was like, perfect. That's what the rule is.
Yeah. So in the realm of digital marketing, there are probably all sorts of mistakes. You've touched on a couple. Like, one would be growing website traffic, or even growing your client base if they're not the right leads, if they're not the right clients. All sorts of mistakes in that realm. Is there any sort of newest digital marketing mistake that you run across and try to help people avoid?
So the newest trend is that people are suffering from the newest shiny object-itis. And so since 2000, I would say 11, when Facebook and social media advertising really took off, it birthed this wave of digital marketers that were basically one-tool wonders. And then when Facebook and Apple and everybody decided that we're in charge here with the big boys, decided, well, we're going to make it harder and harder for you to make a living doing that, through all the things that have happened just in the last 5 years, we have found ourselves looking for that next trick instead of focusing on the fundamentals of marketing. People do not realize, they make the biggest mistake is thinking that digital marketing is any different than any other type of marketing. Whether it be mass media marketing, guerrilla marketing, word of mouth marketing, referral marketing, I don't care what kind of marketing it is, you always come back to the fundamentals. And when you don't start with fundamentals, then your little one-trick ponies put you into a really bad cycle of feast and famine, because it works until it doesn't. And then you have to figure it all out again, versus let's figure out the fundamentals practice everything through fundamentals, so that when things are not working through fundamentals, it's just not going to work. We're not trying to trick the system, right? And we end up with a more stable flow of new clients, or a much stronger retention rate of current clients, which is much better, and that's part of marketing, is retaining your clients, always remarketing to your folks. And then for website marketing, I think the biggest mistake, and my favorite mistake to point out, is when service-centric businesses talk about themselves on the homepage, right up top. I am awesome. I am Mark, and I am the best. grab me while you can. I'm in hot pursuit. Everybody wants to work with me, right? Me, I, us, right? Versus you, your, right? People are selfish. And if we don't talk to their pain point or their dream, because a service-centric business has two purposes. Either you are solving a problem or you're helping attain a dream. It's the only two things you can do as a service-centric business. If you don't start there, you have lost them within the first 3 seconds. Too many opportunities to find somebody that's going to resonate, right? We want that confirmation bias that somebody understands my problem, that I'm not crazy. Oh, you get it, right? So we're reworking our website right now because we didn't go far enough with that. We just said, hey, most people struggle with websites, but guess what? We're here to help. Instead of, no, you're probably one of these, you probably have one of these 6 scenarios going on, and this is where you're at. And this is, and then we can start talking about what is the cure for one of those 6 diagnoses, right?
That's smart.
Then talk about us only on either far down onto the homepage, very short, and then give the opportunity to an about page that we can then talk about, been given the permission to talk about ourselves.
Well, it sounds like really great advice. So if you want to learn more about Buzz and his businesses, you can go to buzzworthy.biz. For the book, you can go to ruleof26.com. And maybe as a final question real quick, I think it's great that you're doing this, the work through Warriors Rising to help other veteran entrepreneurs. If you could tell us about that real quick.
So I stumbled upon Warrior Rising, and when I moved from Alaska down to Illinois, and I was looking for the philanthropy. To me is kind of a responsibility of business owners. For not giving back to our community, we're basically just extracting resources and keeping it. And I just don't feel like that's the right energy we should, as business owners and employers and service providers to our community, really thrive, right? And so, I mean, at one point, I probably went a little too overboard. I think we figured out that I had donated about $100,000 in 1 year worth of pro bono services to nonprofits. But, it was great. It helped us. It helped me feel good about what we were doing for the community. And, I just think that that's where we're at. So I stumbled upon Warrior Rising, who mentor transitioning veterans from the military into entrepreneurship. And so the term vetrepreneur is the veteran who becomes an entrepreneur. And kind of like dadpreneurs and womanpreneurs and mompreneurs and all that other stuff, right? So what I do for them is mentor. I volunteer mentorship. So I just had a call where I was in front of about 15 vetrepreneurs, and we were talking about business leadership and just what does it mean to be a business leader? Because most of them are a solopreneur, and some of them are looking to get their first employee. Well, how do I handle that as a leader? Because if we set that precedence early, like I didn't, one of my mistakes is I befriended everybody that came into my business, because it's a very lonely place, and that's where you can make friends, right? And they're paying to hang out with you. So you're paying them to hang out with you, right? So I was teaching against that mistake and helping them out. So that's what we do there. The guys who run it are all veterans, really good guys. Jason, the CEO and founder of it, is just amazing. He leads by example, and I'm really honored to be given the opportunity to donate my time and my experience to help these guys out.
Well, it's fantastic. So thank you for all of that. And Buzz, thank you for being a great guest here today. I appreciate you being so forthright with different mistakes and learning experiences that you've had through different phases of your life and your career. That's what this podcast is all about. So thank you for being here.
No worries. I hope somebody gets something from it and doesn't make some of the mistakes I made.
Thanks again. Thanks, Buzz.